depending on where you're joining us from around the country. My name is Thomas Horst, and I will be going over the first part of the presentation today. Will include the company history. And today's topic that we're going to be covering is the Housing First, the HUD Housing First and Coordinated Assessment. I'm one of the senior account executives here at CaseWorthy covering the Central United States. And the other member on my team today is Richard Rapolo, who covers the regional development activities out on the West Coast. And Richard is going to be actually delivering the actual live software demo of the Housing First and Coordinated Assessment. So welcome everyone again. We've got a lot of material to cover today, so we're going to go through my first section as quickly as possible so we can dive into why everyone's really here today, which is to actually see the live software in action. So again, I'm going to buzz through the company history and overview of CaseWorthy, and then Richard's going to go into the coordinated and assessment and the Housing First presentation, which will include how to set up the programs within the system, including the projects and assessments, how to set up an emergency shelter within the CaseWorthy database, and then the actual client participant intake workflow for Housing First. Again, we're going to do a live intake and assessment, and we're actually going to create a reservation and show you real-time bed availability across the other across your other participating shelters. And once we actually create that reservation, when you send that client participant off to that other participating shelter, we're going to show you how that check-in process works on their end after they receive the alert, either how you set it up, either via email or text that a participant is going to be heading their way. And then we're going to wrap everything up with, once all this good data is within your system and database, we're going to show you how to extract that information out into robust reports, whether that's a standard compliance or customer reports, or most common in our industry is going to be the ad hoc or customer report through our CaseWorthy analytics. And we do like to save a couple of minutes at the end of our presentation for a question and answer. When you interacted with the system through your GoToWebinar portal, you'll see at the bottom of that basically pop-up box there is a questions tab. If you have any questions as Richard is going through the presentation, you can type your questions into that box, and I will be the moderator checking those questions. And if I have the answer available, I will directly answer that question. Or if you don't want to type it in and if you want to wait to the end, everyone is on mute right now for quality, voice quality control purposes for the webinar, but we will unmute everyone at the end of the presentation for any live discussion that you want to have. But we do save that towards the end of the presentation. And one of the other things I did want to mention as we're going through this is if you see something that you want to know more about, whether it's directly from what Richard is showing you in the presentation, or something that you will see on the PowerPoint, which also, upon your request, the PowerPoint that you're going to be seeing at the beginning of this presentation, we will make available to you as a leave with. So whether you want to share it with your department, within your program, or with your executive management, just request through the email that we sent you out to notify you of this webinar. Just let us know, and we can actually send you a copy of this PowerPoint. So a lot of information within these slides as a leave with. Some of them you'll find will go against a little bit the convention of a slide being too busy, but it's done so purposely so you can have as much information when we send this to you as possible. So along those lines, we just wanted to briefly define out what a coordinated assessment was. And this is the definition as it pertains specifically to HUD HMIS. But one of the things I also wanted to mention is a coordinated assessment, or whether it's a central intake, common intake, common assessment. This is going to be specifically for HMIS, but if you're doing a collaborative project within your community where, for example, let's say you're the lead agency and you have sub-agencies and you're collecting common data within that, it's not just with HMIS we can do this. We can do a collaborative coordinated assessment within any community program that you're trying to capture. So whether it's out of school time for education, whether it's a domestic violence initiative, reentry initiative, whatever the collaborative process is, we can make a coordinated assessment for any of those processes. But for this presentation today, it's going to be specific to HUD and HMIS. So this slide will specifically define out what the model is and what the coordinated assessment is. So this will be available when we send it to you as well. So a little backgrounder on CaseWorthy as far as where we came from. CaseWorthy was created back, depending on who you talk to, it's either 2008 where we were incorporated, and we delivered our first solution in 2009. And what we found during that time frame is there was a increasingly growing underserved technology need, not only for the vendors that we were working with at the time, but for those of us who actually worked within the nonprofit and human services world. We needed to move beyond counting things, and we needed to get to basically measuring outcomes and transformational relationships. So that's why CaseWorthy was created. So founded by our CEO, Brian Bingle, and he and a carefully chosen staff partnered with an organization called Haven for Hope down in San Antonio, Texas, to basically create an organization-wide or an enterprise-wide outcomes-focused solution that would automate and simplify basically all of their programs and services needs. And Haven for Hope is not just any old organization. It's actually the largest transformational campus in the world, spanning over 38 acres, I think is the more accurate right now, working with over 80 agencies. And if you looked at through the holiday period, they were servicing over 2,000 plus clients and participants a day during that peak time. And one of the things we like to mention is our partnership is still very strong with them to this day, and you can check out them a little bit more at their website at havenforhope.org. But one of the things you'll also notice by looking at our staff makeup, and one of the things that certainly attracted me to join CaseWorthy is many of us come from the same side of the desk that you're sitting on now. So it's whether, as I said before, if we work for another vendor within the industry, or people like myself who work directly for large multi-program nonprofits, the solutions that we developed for you are developed from the same folks that went through the same trials and tribulations that you're going through now. So we like to say it's created by nonprofit and HHS professionals for those same professionals. And experience is very important as you're out there doing your due diligence as well. So CaseWorthy is deployed across 1,000 organizations right now with 9,500 plus end users across the United States, which also includes 3 statewide deployments in Idaho, Hawaii, and Connecticut. And kind of speaking to that experience, this is one of those busy slides. Again, it's done so on purpose because we have a lot of experience when you work with us. And whether that's, I won't go through them all, but some of the ones obviously through the HMIS function, whether you're a CAP or county agency, a veteran services, and we have several of these organizations represented on this call today, domestic violence, Ryan White initiatives. There's not a program or service out there, rarely, that we don't have direct experience working for or developing solutions for. And in part of what we do in CQI, which is continuous quality improvement, is we constantly survey our prospects and our clients and partners on why did you select CaseWorthy? What were some of the differentiators as you were doing your due diligence? What made you select us? And we kind of put together this slide as through some of that feedback. And again, I won't go through every one of them because this will be a leave with for you. But some of the things to highlight was the very simple to navigate, clean interface that your Richard is going to be able to show you. The customization, teaching you how to fish, if you will. There's no programming or HTML involved with building out the different assessments, treatment plans, intake forms. All those things are basically fill in the blank, drag and drop, select the type of answer that you want. It's very similar if anyone's ever used SurveyMonkey. I want this to be a yes or no response. I want this to be a check all that apply. I want this to be, conditional question. Whatever those are, we give you those tools and show you how those tools, and we do a whole separate webinar around how easy the system is to configure. So I mentioned reports is one of the strongest parts of our solution. Very robust reporting. the data is not any good to you if you can't extract it out and make it useful. So that's whether it's making it graphical, being able to export it out to Excel, for those folks, being able to build it into annual reports, being able to build it into grant applications. You're able to do that with all the reports, and Richard's going to show you a little bit of that at the end of the presentation. A lot of the things and tools that ship within the system that come baseline, again, I won't go through them all, but what we're going to show you is the ability to email and text alerts to an advanced organization to let them know participants are coming. The interface, being able to use our system from any internet-enabled device in the world with a secure username and password. Just so much functionality within the system. And because our system is built on contemporary architecture, which is the latest version of Microsoft SQL Server database, we're able to introduce new technology to the system very quickly. And we'll tease this out into a new slide here moving forward, but things like tagging or spatial mapping, an integrated event scheduler, calendar, things that you're just not seeing in most other vendors right now in the industry. And again, teased it out into a more easy to read slide as a leave with, but the advanced case notes function, which includes electronic signatures, full document management, having an outward facing web portal, swipe and scan card capabilities, internal and external time management, goes on. And a lot of this can be found at CaseWorthy.com as well for additional information. But so much functionality and tools within our framework that comes shipped baseline with our product. Professional services, or basically the services after the sale, something we take a lot of pride in, and our customers have said is very different in the industry as far as going above and beyond. So the first part of it is the full cycle contract to go live project management. We're with you every step of the way, and that actually includes coming on site to your location to do that in discovery and kickoff meeting, which we have found has been invaluable. The face-to-face interaction, and we can do webinars like this, but nothing replaces that being there and developing it with you as far as on site. That feeds right into the training part of it. We're with you every step of the way, and again, the teaching you how to fish. So we are going to give you extensive training on how to use the tools so you don't have to contact us to make simple edits and changes to your system. Updates, you get a new grant funder requirement, whatever those things are, we're going to show you how you're able to use those tools yourself in real time, so you can save your organization basically money in the long term and time without having to contact your vendor every time to make changes to your own database. If you have an existing system that you need to migrate or convert or integrate data from, we do that within our professional services department. If you don't have the capacity or time after your system is live to create custom forms, whether it's an intake, assessment, introduce an evidence-based program, obviously our professional services and implementation team can do that for you. Same thing with reports. If there's a report that you need after you go live, we have the ability to work with you if you don't have the time or capacity to do that. And we even give you very specific Microsoft SSRS reporting training if you want to go above and beyond and go very high level with your reports. If there's existing systems that you need to integrate with, whether it's a state, county, or government, obviously with their permission to do it, what we call an API or an application platform interface, a technology bridge, if you will, we can create those as well. And certainly all the phone and email customer support that go with it. So obviously, even after the training, you're never going to get 100% the first time around. If you run into something you forgot or don't understand, you pick up the phone or email us during extended business hours. For those technical people on the call, I'll go through this kind of quickly, but if you want to know a little bit more technical specs about us, we're a web-based technology. Again, you can access it from anywhere in the world with a secure username and password from an internet-enabled device. If it's a PC or laptop, we run on the most common browsers that you can think of, and the same interface that Richard is going to show you that you'll see on a PC laptop is the same interface that you'll see on your smartphone, iPad, or tablet running any of these browsers as well. And I put MacBook Pro in here because our CEO, Brian Bingle, actually runs on his MacBook Pro through a Chrome browser our application, and it runs just as quickly as ours does using Chrome on Windows technology. So we are a Microsoft platform, the most common platform in the world, running a 4.5 .NET framework. As I mentioned earlier, the most recent version of SQL Server database. And if you need any technical specs beyond this slide, just let us know. We have a lot of white paper with the technical specs that'll put you right to sleep if you read it. So if you're not a technical person. So I mentioned earlier also client references, very important part, integral part of what we do, and it establishes three things when you talk about our client references. The first and foremost is that it establishes our expertise in the field in doing large, complex, multi-program installation, and not only of all the programs and services, but all the complex compliance reporting that goes along with that. It also demonstrates how working with a customer-focused partner with a lot of experience in the industry, you can avoid a lot of the technology adoption pitfalls that are associated with it, meaning that you can leverage technology that exists that we've created for other similar organizations around the country. So what we found is whether you're doing a domestic violence model, it kind of follows an 80-20 rule. The 80% of the outcomes and activities that you're trying to achieve within that model are very similar to how we do it in Austin, Texas, or Boston, Massachusetts, or in San Jose, California. The last 20% is your unique program delivery on how you do it. So we can show you other models of how other folks are doing it around the country, or if you're going for an evidence-based model yourself, we can build it from the ground up. But you'll have that in working with our professional services that have worked with other or similar organizations on how they're doing it, and it's up to you whether you want to incorporate some of those models or again start from scratch doing your own. And finally, it sets the stage for understanding that what we want to do with you at the end of the day is establish a partnership. And a true partnership is something that's not just, thank you for signing the contract, I'll talk to you later, but it's something that happens over many years. We want to be the technology partner for you, and we truly believe our technology is going to be the only one you need moving forward, so you don't have to have 4 to 5 different concurrent technology systems to do what CaseWorthy can do for you, and we want to exceed your expectations at every step of the process. So real quickly, once Richard concludes the presentation, some of the things we want you to take away is we're an enterprise or organization-wide solution. One vendor that's going to handle all of your outcomes, programming, and services for your entire organization. What we used to call a nice to have, which is technology for nonprofits and human health and human services, it's now mission critical technology. You have to have the right tools to be operationally efficient in what you're doing. So having the right folks that have built and worked on your side of the desk delivering and creating those solutions helps you deliver that mission critical technology. Our end-to-end service model, and don't take our word for it, basically, talk to our clients, talk to our partners, talk to our references, and you'll find very quickly that part of what we do is customer service all the way through. And the last part of it is we automate and simplify your workflow process. This is why we do what we do, so you can achieve that operational performance and achieve your outcomes in the communities that you serve. So appreciate this part of the time with you. And again, anything that you saw on the presentation, anything that you are going to see with Richard, just reach out to us and let us know what you'd like to see more of, and we can set up a personal demonstration or even a talk time if you just want to talk about industry outcomes. Anything that you want to talk about above and beyond what you see here, just follow up with us and let us know. So Richard, I'm going to turn it over to you for the live presentation, and I'll stick on until I can see your screen.
Okay, sounds good, Thomas. Thanks so much.
All right, and I just made you the presenter.
Okay, show my screen.
I can see it.
And are we? Okay, terrific. Hey, Thomas, appreciate that, and we'll go ahead and get started. We wanted to just take a quick moment and kind of walk through a little bit of navigation before we actually get into the CA housing presentation. Thomas kind of mentioned, one of our differentiators is the ability that we can create roles. We define the functionality that exists in those roles, and then we map a user to a role. And so if I'm a user, I log onto the system, and I'm going to go directly to whatever role you have me mapped to. And if we look across the top underneath my name in the upper right-hand corner, you can see all features. So that just means I am mapped to the all features role, and the functionality that exists in this all features role will appear over here on the left-hand side, our navigation panel. Now, we are a tab-driven system, and so we have a case management tab, we have an organization tab, we have an administration tab. And so within the case management tab, this is the tab that the majority of your users will spend the most amount of time in, as this is the tab that kind of captures and records and shows the client data that you've been tracking within the system. And so within our all features role, we've got a lot of functionality here, so in this particular role, we might be tracking some health management type stuff. We might be doing some billing issues of this particular role, and so we might be doing some time management as well. So that's why, as a user of this particular role, I need to have all of this functionality available to me as a user. Now, you can also map a user to more than one role. So Thomas and I, as kind of presenters and doing demonstrations for agencies, we are mapped to many different roles. And so depending on really what the topic is we're going to cover, we will have access to different roles. And so today we're going to drive our presentation through the HMIS All Features role. And so let's go ahead and capture that particular role. And as we do that, now it's logged in the HMIS All Features role, and so we have defaulted to the Case Management tab. And so now you can see over here on the navigation panel, we have far fewer menu items associated with this particular role. We don't need the health management. We're not doing any kind of, medical billing, or we're not capturing any kind of ICD-10 codes as part of this role, right? A user within this role. So you define what functionality that exists in each individual role that you have. And so, we can do a presentation for you to kind of show you how you define that functionality on a role-by-role basis. Not really the emphasis for today's, but we did just want to point that out, that on a role-by-role basis, you can really scale down the functionality that exists within a role, make it very applicable to what the users that are mapped to that role, make it relevant for what they're doing within your organization. So why have a user look at a lot of functionality, a lot of screens, a lot of forms, if 50% of it is just not relevant for what they do within your organization? Scale it back, only give them views of what is relevant for what they do. Simplified view makes it easier to train those users as well. So good stuff with the role. Okay, so when we talk about coordinated assessment, we're going to go ahead and talk about a couple setup items first. And so we're going to come over here to our administration tab. And if we select our setup area over here, our setup work group area here, you can see we just have a few items that will pop out on our pop-out menu. And let's say we wanted to go ahead and look at our project. The rest of the world, they call them programs. In the HUD world, that lingo has changed to projects. And so if we wanted to go ahead and look at all of the projects we have set up in our demo database, you can see that from this summary form, we have a total of 154 projects that we have set up in our database. And so there are no limits to the number of projects that you can have set up. And if we wanted to scroll down and specifically look for the one, we could go ahead and find that, or you can see here we do have kind of a descriptor of this. So if I type in housing, then it'll go ahead and bring up any project that we have set up in the database that has housing in its description. And we're going to be focusing on the housing first project today as part of our presentation. And so now by kind of zeroing in on that, now we're just looking at that particular project. We're not looking at, all the 154. So you can, we have these filters that are set up, just a summary form with a filter on it, and these are very easily done within the database itself. So as part of this particular project that has been set up, we can assign specific services. So as part of this project, do you offer, specific services on behalf of this project? Things like maybe meals or showers or chaplain service or bed night, whatever it happens to be. You can specifically assign services to this particular project. Same thing with assessments. Now you're going to see that for this particular project, we have only mapped the financial assessment to this project. But if we wanted to add another assessment to this particular project, we could certainly do that, and we could go ahead and add our assessment, and our assessments would be listed here. So you can set up as many assessments as you want in the database. Assessment really is nothing more than just a form that has a series of questions, right? Assessments are just questions that you're asking because you need to capture specific information. Now, if we scroll down here, you'll see that we have all of the HUD assessments. So we've got the financial assessment, which we have mapped here. But if we wanted to do the HOPWA or health insurance assessment, or the PATH, or the runaway homeless youth data assessment, so any HUD assessment that is required, we have set up in our database. But again, in addition to all the HUD assessments, you can create as many different assessments as you want set up within the database. In terms of assessments, they are point in time. So you can say, you know what, I want to capture this assessment when we're entering them into a project, or maybe this is going to be during or at exit or annual, and you can tag all of them. So again, if a client is in a project for a many number of months, and you might be doing financial assessments during the time over that 6 or 9 months that the client is in that project, then you can do a financial assessment as often as you want, and you'll always get the most current snapshot of the financial assessment of that. So we just, for our purposes today, we just have the one assessment assigned. You'll see that when we do our workflow, you'll see the reason why we don't want to take up the whole presentation going through 5 HUD assessments. We're just going to go through one really quickly so that we can keep moving in our pace. So now on the Housing First, I also wanted to kind of show you on that particular project also some HMIS setup information that's associated with that. So again, we've got our edit with all the information you're capturing on the project level, and then the HMIS setup that goes along with any project. You're all familiar with this. What kind of a project type is it? What is the project identifier? Emergency shelter. So again, basic information that HUD is requiring us to capture on behalf of these projects. And then the federal partner funding programs, the 34 down here. So we would go ahead and select, who these funding programs are for this particular HUD program. We've just identified, the emergency shelter, a couple of those associated with this project. So that's kind of just, setting up a project, kind of associating assessments, funding sources, things of that nature. One last thing that I just wanted to highlight, because we are going to walk through a workflow as part of our presentation today. So we also just wanted to kind of, while we're here in the setup area, just show you our workflows. And again, in our demo database, we have 74 specific workflows that are set up in the database. And workflows are just really, if you have any business process that requires multiple steps, you can create a workflow, and you define the steps that are associated within that workflow. So again, I can go ahead and scroll down here and find the particular workflow that I'm looking for, or I could go ahead and do the same thing. I could do a typing search here. It'll go ahead and bring me up any workflow that has housing in the description. And so if we wanted to look at our Housing First intake workflow, we could go ahead and pull that up, and you can see that this particular workflow, we're going to add a client quickly. We may or may not add family members. We're going to enroll the client into a program. If there are family members, do we want to enroll them into a program? We're going to do an assessment. Now, depending on what program we enroll the client into as part of this workflow, whatever assessments are mapped to that program will automatically appear through the workflow. So just what we looked at, when we're mapping assessments to programs or projects, that they will appear. And then we said, hey, we may document a presenting issue as well. And then for our purposes today, once we go through this workflow, then we're going to say, you know what, we want to see what is the coordinated assessment bed availability among any shelter in our community that is participating with us. Then we'll go ahead and see what those shelters are and what the availability of beds are, and we'll be able to, as part of this workflow, go ahead and reserve the client into another facility, because maybe the client's coming into our facility and we're booked for the evening, and so we can go ahead and look at the rest of the shelters in the community that are participating with us in this endeavor, and we'll be able to see what their availability is, and then we'll be able to reserve them into a bed right there. And so again, doesn't matter if a client goes into my facility or Thomas's facility or another shelter that's in our community, they'll have access to the database and see all the availability, and they'll be able to refer them into another shelter within the community. So this is our particular workflow that we are going to go ahead and take a look at today. So we wanted to show you those steps. One last thing as far as the form properties, if we look at the workflow properties, you can see that we're saying that when we complete this particular workflow, we want to go ahead and document an intake service as a service, because we're actually taking a few moments. We're gonna create this workflow. We're gonna generate the workflow. So we want to get credit for our particular effort and just document a service as an intake service. And this could be any service that you have set up in your database. So if you wanted to document another particular service associated with another workflow that you have generated, you'll be able to do that as well. So we just wanted to kind of show you that. So that's the workflow, and so now we're going to go ahead. This is just some of the setup things at the project level. We also wanted to show you that on the setup side within the shelter world, and so we're going to go ahead and look at emergency shelter setup. And so we're going to show you some functionality right now that we call our pin pages, and they're really, kind of your favorites. So as a user, if you always work in certain forms and you want to kind of make them your favorite, you can go ahead and create a pin page of that, and then they will be here for you. So if we wanted to go ahead to the housing setup, we could just select on that pin page, and now it will take us to that particular area within the system. So if this particular path would have taken me 3 clicks to get here, by saving it as a pin page, I just go ahead and pick the housing setup, and now it just in 1 click, it gets me right to where I want to be. And so now we've categorized our setup area, because this is kind of where we're setting up resources. And so this could be housing setup. It could be, if you have classrooms, it could be setting up an individual class with the specific number of desks that you have available within that class. We have different types of housing. We have transitional housing, which is more apartment style. We have emergency housing, and we also have scattered housing. So if you work in any of those housing environments. And so for our purposes today, we're interested in the emergency shelter as part of this. So we wanted to go ahead and look at this. So you can see that within our database, we have 3 emergency shelters that are set up, and let's say we wanted to look at the Dale Test Facility. Let's go ahead and take a look at within this particular facility. It looks like we have 3 different sections or areas that we have classified as shelters within this facility. So maybe this is a multi-level facility, and on each level we've got kind of our gymnasium style shelter, and so each one of these might have a different layout. And so let's go ahead and look at the east wing and just look at what that design is all about. And so this is a one-time setup area, because each one of you will have your shelters, and you'll have different floor plans or setups associated with your shelters, as well as any shelter within your community. So these might be your specific shelters, but then the organization, 2 miles down the road is participating. They might have 3 individual shelters, and so you're setting up the floor plans in the database, and so you're setting up as many shelters that are participating in your community. You're getting them set up, And so this is just a matter of, are these single beds, are they mats, are they bunk beds? And if we wanted to add a new bed to this particular layout, it's just a matter of grabbing, is it a single bed, a mat, or a bunk bed, dragging it into the facility. Any one of these beds that you have set up, you have properties associated with that individual bed or mat or bunk bed. And so you can say, okay, this particular mat, is it going to be open-ended? It's always going to be there, or is it going to be for a limited point of time? So you can have your end date there. This is a single bed. What's the availability? This is normal availability. But again, you can have overflow and seasonal situations. What is the status? It's available. So might have some that are in development or under repair. So again, what is the status of this particular? Is there a specific target population that you want to put in this particular bed? You can identify that. And these drop-down boxes are configurable. So again, you would have the ability, if you have different types of target population, in addition to what you see here, we'll be able to add to this list very easily. Now, on the CA bed, so again, you can see down at the bottom, is this particular bed, does it have an electrical outlet available to it? Is it handicap accessible? Is it a CA bed? Now, the CA bed, that's kind of the coordinated assessment. So this is going to be one of those beds that you have identified that anybody in the community can make a reservation into this bed. So now if we go ahead and kind of close this out, you can see that as part of this particular shelter, within the E-wing section of this shelter, we have, I don't know, maybe 40 or 50 beds here that are set up. And only a handful of them we've identified as coordinated assessment bed, as indicated by the legend down there at the bottom. That means the rest of these beds are going to be utilized for your normal clients that you work with as an agency. You're going to make sure that, you're going to have enough beds to kind of cover, the homeless population that you work with, on a day in, day out basis. But you've also identified these coordinated assessment beds that you're saying, you know what, anybody in the community. So if I have an individual that goes into Thomas's agency, and they're booked for the evening, they can go ahead and look at my availability, and they can make a reservation for someone into one of my available CA beds. So this is kind of the setup side that we wanted to just show you there. So we're going to change hats now. We're going to go back to our case management tab, and now we're going to say, we're someone working in the shelter, and an individual walks in the door, Frank Clark, and Frank says, he wants to know if we have any beds available for the evening. Now, a couple things we can do. We can go ahead and do a find client, and we can see if Frank is already in our database. So we can do a search for Clark by last name, by first name, by social, birth date, whatever information Frank is willing to give us. So we can go ahead and do a search by Clark, and you can see that we only had one Clark, and it was Amanda Clark, so it brought us into that. So there were no Frank Clarks that were in our particular database. And so now we're going to say, okay, what we want to do now is we want to do a quick intake, Frank, and get you into our database. And so we're going to go ahead and launch this Housing First intake, and this is the intake that we looked at on the setup side. Now, we're going to go ahead and see, we know that we're booked for the evening. We're going to go ahead and, as part of this intake, these are the steps that we have identified, and the last step there is going to look at the CA bed availability across the community, any shelter that is participating with us. But because Frank is not already in our database, we just want to capture some information on Frank, some basic information. Now, this information can be as little or as comprehensive as you want it to be. You saw that when we set up workflows, you're the one determining what the steps are within that workflow. So let's go ahead and just put in Frank Clark. So we'll type in name, and we'll put in Frank, and then we'll go ahead and we said, we want to capture some birth date information. And as soon as we tab off of that, it automatically calculates the age. You can see that we've automatically defaulted a Social Security number that client doesn't know, but you've got, of course, all of these HUD required drop-downs, refuse, data not collection, partial or full. So if you did want to capture social, you could go ahead and type that in. Veteran status, we'll capture that. Gender, So again, any of this information, it can be part of your intake, or you can only capture maybe name and address, or name and social, whatever you want to do. So we'll check for duplicates. We know that Frank is not in the database, so we're saying this is a new client. We'll say race, we've got a drop-down list, a multi-select, so we can select a couple of those. Ethnicity defaults to client doesn't know. If we want to leave that, we can. If we want to change it, we can go to whatever ethnicity we want to grab. And then we also said, hey, we want to capture, see if Frank has a cell phone. Frank does have a cell phone. And then we also, Frank has an email address, and so we can put in that. fclark@gmail.com. I can type that out again, or I can just go ahead and copy and paste that into the confirm email and paste that in. And now we'll go ahead and save that individual record. And so now Frank Clark is he's got a demographic record in our database. Does Frank have any family members? He's alone tonight, so we're going to go ahead and just save through that. And so now we're going to go ahead and enroll Frank into a program. For our purposes, we've just identified that, hey, we want to enroll Frank into a Housing First program. So when we're looking at this drop-down, these are all of those programs or projects that we had set up in the database. And so again, now we've got a nice search by type. So if we typed in housing, as indicated by the bold letters here, it'll bring up any project that has housing in it. We'll go ahead and select that. This is going to just be an individual enrollment. Did we want to assign a case manager? We're not going to now, because we're just going to get Frank in as quickly as we can. We want to capture basic information. We're going to reserve him into another facility, and then they may want to do some case management with them. If we wanted to, we could go ahead and assign a case manager at this point in time. I will select this here just to show you what we call conditional logic. So when we assign a case manager, the affirmative, you can see two additional fields appeared. First, it says, okay, select your case manager, and then did you want to go ahead and create an email? Maybe we'll just say yes, because we'll show you the email functionality here. So let's say we wanted to send an email now to the case manager and just give them a heads up that they have a new case assignment. We've automatically defaulted in an email template. As you can see, this is a very specific email that we're sending out. We're identifying a case manager that they have a new enrollment. So we've created a very simple email template that says, hey, the purpose of this email is to let you know that Frank Clark has been assigned to you as a case manager. Case assignment is on behalf of the Housing First, dated today's date. So you can see that with our template, we merged client information into the template. We brought in the client name. We brought in the case manager's name. We brought in the program or the project enrollment, and, of course, the date. And so now we can go ahead and send that out. And so now that email is going to go to the case manager. It's just going to give them a heads up that now they have a new case assignment in their particular email. So restrictions, so again, any transaction you can share or not share within the database. So let's go ahead and save that. So now we've successfully enrolled this client into the Housing First program. Now it's saying, do you want to enroll family members? Well, we didn't actually set up any family members, so we'll just kind of save through this. And now it's asking us for the assessments. Now, because we only mapped the one assessment to the Housing First project, that's the only thing appears here. If we would have mapped additional HUD assessments to this particular project, they would all appear here, and the workflow would walk us through each one of those assessments to make sure we're capturing the specific data we need to capture as part of this enrollment. So we're going to say, you know what, we just wanted to capture some basic information. Maybe Frank is currently unemployed and gets $475 from unemployment insurance on a monthly basis. So we'll save through that. And now we're at presenting issues. So did we want to document any presenting issues right now as part of this enrollment? If you do not, this would not be part of your workflow. So again, this workflow can just be, it could be 2 steps, it could be 10 steps. They can be as simple or comprehensive as you want them to be. Presenting issues, you might have a lot of presenting issues that you document on behalf of your clients across all of your projects across the enterprise. And so if you wanted to go ahead and categorize those, let's say this is kind of a generalized evaluation, we can select that and we'll go ahead and search that. And now we're looking at a subset of the issues that we've set up in our database. We're not looking at all of the presenting issues we have set up. And so maybe, Frank has told us he has a chronic health condition, and so we're going to say it's important, the evaluation level. We're going to associate this particular presenting issue with this enrollment. And maybe we wanted to document more information about this case note. And so just as we saw when we did the email, we can bring templates in. So if there are specific, whether they're information releases, authorization forms, if you have specific information you want to capture on behalf of your clients, you can bring those in as templates. Or if this is just going to be, now it can just be a free text, free typing about this specific issue. And so you can see we're going to categorize this particular case note as a presenting issue. If we wanted to categorize it as something else, these would be your categories. How do you want to categorize your particular case notes? So again, you can do that. Let's select a reference date, say today's date, and then let's just say we wanted to just document a quick note and say, Frank says that he has diabetes and is currently treating, whatever you want to say, and you can see I'll go ahead and work on my typing here. So whatever note that you want to go ahead and document here, you can document that. Again, you can associate this note with the program enrollment. Did you want to put your signature as a case manager on this note? You can go ahead and do that. And so now I'm going to go ahead and sign this note. And I'm just signing right here with my mouse. But if you have certain workstations where you're going to capture a lot of signatures, then you might want to get an electronic signature tablet like you see in retail stores, so that hopefully the signature will look a little better than that. Or if you work with tablet devices, you'll be able to use a tablet and, kind of sign with your finger, touch screen. And so you can go ahead and save that. And so now we can go ahead and save this case note, and it will always be part of this particular presenting issues record. And so let's save that. If we wanted to document another issue, we certainly could do that, but we'll just say we're done with that. And now we're at the end of the last step of this, and now it's saying, you know what, we want to go ahead and look at the availability within the community of all the shelters we have set up in our database, which have availability for one of these coordinated assessment beds. And so now you can see right there, there's the Dale facility, the E-Wing. It looks like there are 3 available. Now, in our database, we've got, we've kind of set up some of these providers with the same as our org, and so the distance in miles is 0. But as you have these facilities set up in your community and you're capturing the location, the address for those, CaseWorthy will let you know the distance in miles, because you may want to go ahead and reserve this particular client into a facility that's the closest, right? Maybe make it a little easier for that client to get there. So if we wanted to view the contacts there, we could. But let's go ahead and make a reservation. So let's make a reservation for this client. You could see that the availability on that summary form, there were 3 available coordinated assessment beds, and so we can go ahead and select one of those, and let's make a client reservation. And so now we're going to reserve that individual for one night starting tonight. It'll end tomorrow, and maybe we want to send an email, and this we're just sending manually, but if you automatically wanted to send one, we could certainly do that. And just as we wanted to say create an email, we could do that as well. If we have a template that you want to use for these reservations, we could default that in, or we could just go ahead and type this. So maybe this particular subject is CA bed reservation, and we're sending that to Dale, and so maybe we're just going to let Dale know that we've reserved a client in. So we can say, hello, Dale. CA beds for this evening, whatever your message happens to be. Client should be arriving in 10 minutes. Whatever your message happens to be, and then you can just sign off. So again, if you wanted to go ahead and send this off to the shelter, so now you're going to send this off to Dale. So now Dale has a heads up that they have a reservation that you have scheduled. So now we can see that this is one of the available beds at a shelter that's not ours. We have made that reservation because the client walked into our particular facility. We were completely booked for the evening, so we went ahead and scheduled it into another facility. And so now we'll go ahead and say we're done with this particular workflow, and now we will go ahead and get a summary form that says your workflow is now complete. And these are all the steps that we completed in the workflow, who they were completed by, and the completed date for that. So now it brings us into the Frank Clark record, and you can see that as part of that workflow, we captured some demographic information, so we can show that. We captured, we enrolled this particular client into a project. So there you can see the Housing First is currently enrolled there. If we would have done referrals, it would show that. These are the services. So just as we kind of showed you on the workflow properties, that when we completed that workflow, we wanted to document an intake service because we spent a few minutes with this particular client. So we just want to take credit for, this particular service. So we documented an intake service. And so now, if we come down here to our class and housing history, you can see that a housing reservation has been made for this client, Frank Clark, and it is for the test facility, Dale facility in the E-Wing area within that particular shelter, and it's for this evening. So now, again, so Dale takes the 10 minutes, he gets over there, and so as you've opened up the database through the community, now I'm an individual on the Dale shelter. I can go in to the database, and if you're giving me access to that, either through a user logon or through our out-facing portal, you can do that. And so now we can go ahead and look at. Now we can go ahead and check in the client when the client actually gets to the facility. So this would be Dale's facility. We'll go ahead, and again, we mentioned we have different resources: scattered site housing, transitional housing, emergency shelter. So we can go ahead and check our emergency housing. And these looks like we have 16 shelters that are set up. And if we wanted to, we could scroll down, or we could just go ahead and do another filter on resource type and put in Dale. And now these are the shelters that have Dale in the name. And so now let's go ahead and look at that E-Wing, and let's go ahead and check in. And so as we're looking at this facility here, you can see that as part of this legend, this is our graphical housing. You can see that this is the shelter that we had set up. And so now we can look at individual people that were reserved into this. We can look and see if anybody's already checked into this shelter. And again, we have our legend down there at the bottom. So available, the blues are available, kind of that gold is already reserved, the greens are already checked in. And now we can highlight over here, and we can highlight all the reservations. And now we can go ahead and reserve very quickly and say, well, there's Frank Clark. Now we can go ahead and select Frank right there and check Frank in. He turns to green over here, and then it will also tell us what bed Frank is in. And if we wanted to go down the entire list here, we could quickly just check in all of these clients as they show up, and then another tab that will show you the check-ins over there. So that's kind of the graphical housing component of that. And so we can now go ahead and close this particular this form out. And so if we come back to our case management tab, looking at the individual record for Frank Clark, and go back to the class and housing history, now not only do we show a housing reservation, but we also show a check-in for this particular evening as well, because we checked this particular client into this facility. So as we're doing a lot of that data capture into other areas within the system, we can bring that information to a dashboard view. And so now you get a nice view here to kind of show reservations and check-in history that's been done for this particular client. Now, we kind of went through that whole workflow because this client was not already in our database. But if we have another client that came in, let's say we have another individual that comes into a shelter, he gives the name, his name is Plum, Peter Plum. We can type in the name here, and we can do a search. And you can see that now this particular client is already in our database, and so now we don't have to walk through that workflow. Now we can just come over here to our class and housing history, and if we wanted to just individually put this person into a coordinated assessment bed, now we're looking at the availability, and now you can see Dale's facility only has 2 available because we just checked in a client, and so now we know that this facility only has 2. So the whole purpose of doing the workflow was if somebody was not already in your database and whatever data you wanted to capture, you can create a workflow, capture that data. If a client is already in your database, then it gets very quick. You just do a search. If the client's there, find the client, and then you can go directly to this availability form, and now we can go through that reservation process just as we did on the workflow. So we've got about 5 minutes left, so we wanted to just kind of walk through, some reporting. We don't have a lot of time to show you a lot of the reports that we do, but our reporting is over here in our administration tab. And as the reporting, we have a lot of operational reports, service reports, program reports. If we want to look at a services report, we could do that. We could select a date range and say, you know what, we were looking for maybe services for the month of January, and we wanted to scale that down to maybe all organizations, but maybe only to a specific program or project. And so you can see we need to rename the programs to project here, but maybe we wanted to make this housing first. So we can go ahead and find that, and then we'll say, you know what, any service, we'll say any service is good, and we'll run that report based upon this criteria. It'll go ahead and kind of bring that information up to us. There's the criteria at the top of the screen there that we said, very specific date range, only looking at one program or project. Looked like we had 5 intake services, and there's a blue hyperlink there. So now we can go ahead and drill into that. Now it's going to show us those specific 5 particular clients that we enrolled into this particular project, and there's Frank Clark that was enrolled into this on today's date. Another byproduct of our Microsoft reporting services is the ability to have standard export options. If we wanted to take this out to an XML, Commons Unlimited, PDF, Word, Excel, we could do that as well. So all of our reports will give you the ability that create your criteria, bring up the summary information, and then drill specifically into sub-report information, and this is actually the client transaction detail. Again, with all of our reports, we have the ability that you can schedule reports. So if you wanted to go ahead and create a report and schedule it to be run weekly, monthly, quarterly, schedule that report, identify the members on who's going to get that. An email will go out with them with a PDF version of that report that you've scheduled. Of course, we have all of the compliance reports that HUD requires. Again, we don't have a lot of time to go into all of these, but you're familiar with the HMIS HUD reports. We do have veteran reports, so if you have SSVF grants, that worksheet is part of ours with the communication to the VA through the XML file. So these are all the standard compliance reports. And then the last thing we wanted to show you is what we call our CaseWorthy analytics. And so this will give you the ability to kind of do ad hoc queries. And so now we'll say, we drive these analytics. So we've got services, housing, projects, outcomes, VI SPDAT. So if you're doing those surveys, you have a complete analytic with all the data elements that you've asked during your VI SPDAT surveys. And you'll be able to slice and dice that data as you see fit. Let's go ahead and look at the enrollments analytics. Let's just go ahead and bring that up very quickly here, because maybe you've got your executive director has asked you to go ahead and create a report. The executive director wants to know who was enrolled into the Housing First program. and maybe they're specifically looking for a certain date, maybe in the month of February for 2015. And then in addition to that, they also wanted to know those individual clients that were enrolled into the program, maybe the client's name, age, the beginning and ending date of that enrollment. So let's go ahead and say that's the scenario you've been given as a user, and so now you need to go find that information out. So we're going to go ahead and say we're going to look at distinct client counts of the IDs here. And so now we're going to say we're interested in now looking at program name, right? Because we have a specific program that we've been identified. Maybe we also said the executive director wants to know the client name, so we can say, let's see, client name is right there. ED also wanted to look at the age. They also wanted to look at the enrollment dates, so we can say the begin date for the enrollment, the end date for the enrollment. Did they want to know the status of that enrollment, whether they're still currently enrolled or if they've exited? So it looks like that looks like good information. And then we also needed to kind of track this by a certain month within a year. So now let's bring up our dates, and rather than bring them into a column view, we're going to filter those dates. So calendar year is important to us, and also calendar month name is important to us. So let's bring those up into our filter bucket over there. And so now we're going to say OK. And so out of all the data elements that we had available to us within our analytic, we selected what did we select? Maybe 6 or 7 data elements based upon the request that came across our desk. And so we brought those in, and now CaseWorthy is going to go ahead and load those particular data elements into our summary form here, and you can see that that happened very quickly. And so now any program where you have enrolled clients into a program will appear here. And so now this is the full laundry list of all the programs you have set up in your database. But that's not really what we're interested in at this point in time. We're only interested in our Housing First program. So let's go ahead and find that. And you can see that we could select multiple programs here. This is a multi-select. So let's go ahead and find that Housing First. So we'll find the Housing First, and let's say OK to that. And so now you can see that on the Housing First, we have 68 clients that have been enrolled into this particular program. And so now, but our executive director wanted to know a certain month of a certain year. So now let's go ahead and specifically look at 2015, and we'll say OK to that. And now you can see it went from 68 to 33 because 33 of those client enrollments for this particular enrollment happened in 2015, but now we're specifically interested in the month of February. And so now we can go ahead and say February, and now it looks like we're down to 10 clients. And so now if we wanted to go ahead and select that out, you can see that these are the client names. And then if we wanted to go ahead and expand out on any one of those clients, it'll say what is the age, and then it'll say, well, what was the date of the enrollment, and then the end date. So there's the beginning date of the enrollment. If there is an end date, it'll show that, and then what is the status. And so as we're going column by column here, all it's doing is presenting the next column that we have identified in our analytic here. And so again, if this is what we wanted to look at, we can say great. If we wanted to modify this, we could certainly modify it. We could save this particular analytic. We can give permissions to others in our user network to go ahead and look at this report. This is kind of our grid view or our spreadsheet view. If we'd like to see maybe information more in a charting format, we can go ahead and do a pie chart or, a line chart, bar charts, whatever is applicable to you, and how do you want to present this information. So Thomas, I know we've gone over a couple minutes, but I'll turn it back to you just to see if we have any questions from the crowd. Hopefully we still have a few people that are still with us.
Actually, we do. Looks like all the attendees are still online. So, as I said earlier, what we'd like to do is keep it an open forum here. So what I'm going to do, if you can see the raise your hand feature, or Richard, you can take it off mute for everyone, right? I think we can do that. So we can open it up to any other questions that we have here for the next 5 minutes or so. So if you have a question and you would like to stay on, please do so. Those that can't, we appreciate your time. But we will hang here for a couple more minutes for any additional questions that anyone has. It looked like Ellen Palmer had a specific question on HMIS. The information expires yearly and has to be updated. Would CaseWorthy be able to replace HMIS completely? Yes, it looks like we already answered that it can. Our system can be a standalone HMIS as well as complement or supplement an existing HMIS. Richard, did you want to maybe expand on that any more as far as that?
Well, no, I think you answered it there, Thomas. I mean, Ellen, we are an HMIS compliant software. We have continuums of care that use our system, in the HMIS capacity. That's why we have all those HUD compliance reports that are set up. So, if you're using us for HMIS, we need to get those reports back to HUD, or you do, so that the funding will continue. A couple of those statewide agencies that Thomas mentioned at the beginning are HMIS solutions for us. So the state of Connecticut, the entire state uses us for HMIS, as does the state of Hawaii. So they're capturing the HMIS as well. So absolutely.
Great. Anyone else have any questions? If you want, you can click on the raise your hand feature and we can unmute. And like I said, if you've liked anything that you've seen today, you would like to see more, you wanted some more information on something you saw at the introductory PowerPoint, we're going to follow up with an email to you, but you can also reach out to us if you have any other questions or you'd like to schedule a personalized demo, either with the same information or something with one of your other programs or services that you had, or like I said, you just want to talk generically about transformational relationships and outcomes as it relates to our technology, we can do that as well. But I don't see any other questions popping up here. So again, we appreciate your time. Happy New Year, New Year to everyone again, and we look forward to speaking with and talking with you all very soon. Thank you very much.